Focus. Yeah, alright. Hi guys, so today we're gonna talk about how to run faster again. Specifically, how to run a sub 20-minute 5k. So for me, I sub 20 minutes in my first year of running. So right now, my personal best for 5k is 17 minutes and 53 seconds. I know that's not like elite level fast, but I'm sure that these tips can still help someone who wants to sub 20 minutes in their 5k. So today I'm going to talk about what workouts you should do, more specifically what paces you should be doing those workouts to help you sub a 20-minute 5k, and when you should be doing that in the year, and how everything you do will impact your running performance. And lastly, I'm going to share with you guys some secret tips and tricks when you run the 5k race itself. Alright, so let's start with the key 3 pillars of performance. So that would be your VO2 max, your lactic threshold, and your running economy. If these 3 terms seem so foreign to you, please watch my other videos. But now let's just briefly go through what these terms mean. So your VO2 max is literally the maximum volume of oxygen that your body can utilize. So if you have a higher oxygen carrying capacity, it's likely that your performance will also improve. So next, what is lactic threshold? Pretend that this level is the maximum level that your body can clear your lactic acid produce. So when I'm sitting down, maybe my lactic acid production is here. So since my body can easily clear this lactic acid, I don't feel anything, right? As you run faster, the lactic acid slowly increases in your blood until a certain pace, and at this pace, the rate of clearing is equal to the rate of producing. So that's why we call the lactic threshold. And if you continue to push a pace above your lactic threshold, your body cannot clear as much lactic acid, and you'll then start to feel a pain. It is at this pace is where you want to train your lactic threshold. And you want to train your lactic threshold so that your body's ability to clear your lactic acid goes up. So the last pillar of running performance is your running economy. The less oxygen you use for the same distance, you're more economical. And later I'm going to share with you 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 things that will affect your running economy and how you can train them as well. By the way, these 3 things, right, VO2 max, lactic threshold, and running economy, is also in order of importance. Running economy is the number 1 predictor of performance, followed by lactic threshold, followed by VO2 max. Alright, so with those 3 pillars of running performance in mind, let's dive into the exact workouts we need to do. So to run a 20-minute 5k, I just put that number into the VDOT calculator online, and then it says for training I need to run at 3 minutes 56 seconds. However, 3 minutes 56 seconds might not be your current VO2 max pace. This is the pace that you want to eventually reach, and then you attempt your 20-minute 5k effort. So 3 minutes 56 seconds for a VO2 max workout is what we eventually need to run a sub 20-minute 5k. So when you train your VO2 max, you're not supposed to run at 3 minutes 56 seconds. You're supposed to run at your current VO2 max pace. So how you find your current VO2 max pace? You can do a time trial or you can do a race. If you do a time trial, don't do like a 400 meter sprint, then extrapolate your VO2 max from there. Do something like a 3k to 5k time trial. Also, don't do like a half marathon or marathon time trial. So once you do that time trial, right, you put into the VDOT calculator online, and then once you click the training tab, you'll find out that that's your current VO2 max pace. It should be a pace roughly equal to your 10 to 12 minute all-out effort, and then you train at that pace, and then over time you eventually reach the 3 minute 56 seconds. So generally, VO2 max intervals should range from 1 minute to at most 5 minutes. So that's in the realm of like 400 meter repeats, 800 meter repeats, 1k repeats, and for the really fast runners, 1.2k repeats. So how many repeats you do depends on how fit you are in the season. So for example, you might do 10 times 400 meters, so that's a total of 4k worth of interval. Or you can do 6 times 800 meters, so that's a total of 4.8 kilometers worth of intervals. So as you get faster, the goal is to run a longer total interval duration. You have to add up all the intervals, and that number you want it to increase over time. And as for the rest intervals, we want to keep them to a 1-to-1 ratio. So that means if your interval length is 3 minutes, you want to rest for 3 minutes as well. So now we're moving on to the second most influential factor for running performance, which is your lactic threshold. Alright, so back to the Jack Daniels calculator again. For a 20-minute 5k, a lactic threshold would be around 4 minutes 16 seconds per k. So 4 minutes 16 seconds is the pace that you eventually want to train to. That way you know you're confident enough to run your 20-minute 5k time trial. A lactic threshold effort is a 1 hour maximum effort at your peak performance. So when you're training, that means you're still fatigued from the previous days. A lactate threshold effort should feel like an effort you can last for only about 30 minutes in training. So how do you do lactate threshold workout? Same thing, we're gonna be doing intervals, but we're gonna be doing a bit longer intervals. From the book Distance Running Formula, the coach likes to give his athletes mile repeats, which means 1.6 km repeats with a rather short rest. Like an example of a LT workout might be a 3 times 1.6 km run with maybe a 3-minute rest to 1 minute. So if you find that 3 times a mile seems too easy for you, you can obviously go for 4 times a mile or 5 times a mile also. That will make your training a lot more effective because that increases the time spent at lactate threshold. We've covered both VO2 max and lactate threshold, so now we're going to be moving on to the last most important factor, which is running economy. So as I said in the beginning, running economy has at least 5 factors that influence it. Some are factors that you can control, some are factors that you cannot control. One of them is the temperature. So the warmer or hotter it is will increase the heart rate and make it feel harder, and it will damage your running economy. Another factor that you cannot really control is the altitude. So when you go higher up into the mountains, you'll also decrease your running economy. If I'm not wrong, the number of red blood cells produced is less or something like that. So those are 2 things that you cannot really control, but there are 4 other things that you can train and will really impact your running economy much more. So the first thing is repetition workouts. So repetition workouts are workouts done at your current mile race pace. So when you do your repetition runs, you have to keep asking yourself in mind, can I run a full mile at this pace? If the answer is no, then you're probably running too fast. Repetition runs are only 100, 200, 300 or 400 meter, and very fast elite runners will run 600 meter. But if you're watching this video, you're probably not the elite runner. So stick to 100, 200, 300 and 400 meter repetition runs. So the purpose of repetition runs is to teach your body how to run fast and with good form. So an example of repetition run might be like 4 times 200 meters with a 200 meter jog. So that's almost like a ratio of a 1:2 work rest ratio. You should be resting much longer than you are running. So you might start with 4 times 200 meters, then maybe slowly increase up to 8 to 10 times 200 meters. So that will be a repetition run. The next thing that affects running economy will be your mileage, how many miles you run in a week. Basically, the more you run, the more your body gets used to running and naturally becomes more efficient at it. So that's why elite runners, they run more than 200 kilometers a week, because that is to train their running economy. But the most important point you need to remember is that the longer and longer you run, the higher risk of injury you have. So that's why we need to keep our long runs and most of our runs easy. In fact, there's this general rule which says that 80% of your runs should be easy and the last 20% of runs are your interval and hard workouts. So basically, most of your mileage should be done at zone 2 or less. If you don't know how to calculate your zone 2 heart rate, you just go for a maximum heart rate test, run all out and find what's your maximum heart rate, take that number times 65%, and that will be like the highest heart rate you should run at an easy pace. That's why I run my long runs with a heart rate monitor. That's how I know I'm not running too fast and my heart rate is going above that number. So for a 20-minute 5k runner, right, you guys are not really beginner runners. You guys are also not like advanced or elite runners. So I think a very rough mileage to aim for a week is maybe 30 to 60 km. Personally, I think that is good enough to run a 20-minute 5 km, and if you run longer than that, remember it increases the risk of injury as well. Alright, the next thing that affects your running economy would be your weight. Do you remember the formula for running economy? Milliliters of oxygen per kg per km. So you can see that the mass you're carrying directly affects the running economy. So how you decrease your weight can be from 2 things: your equipment and obviously your body. I think equipment is the easiest to lose from. Wear a lighter pair of shoes, or even carbon-plated shoes. That will also increase your running economy. So besides losing mass from the equipment you wear, losing some body weight will also help you increase your running economy. Don't eat too much fat. Oils, especially oils, are like 99% fat. And basically the idea to lose weight is just to have your calorie intake less than your calorie expenditure. The next thing that affects your running economy will be your biomechanics. So how can you improve your running biomechanics? Is actually 2 things. You have to do some strides and you have to work on your technique. And technique is further broken down into 3 things: your form, your cadence, and your breathing. So let's start with strides. Strides are basically 10 to 20 seconds bursts of speed. You want to run them at like 90 to 100% type of effort. Strides are just to train your body to move fast. Usually runners will do strides as part of their warm-up before an interval run. So before your VO2 max, before your lactate threshold run, do a couple of strides, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 strides with quite a long rest. You don't really have to count that rest. Then we're going to move on to technique. So as I said, technique, there's 3 things: form, cadence, and breathing. In the book Distance Running Formula, Coach Jack Daniels also explains why breathing 2 steps in, 2 steps out is the best breathing technique because it exchanges the highest volume of air in your lungs. Okay, next thing will be your cadence. We want to be running at a cadence of at least 180 steps per minute. For technique, I'll just link a video that I've done about 10 points for running technique. I'm not gonna go through in this video because maybe that'll be a bit too long. So stuff like don't overstride where your arm should be, don't cross your center line, don't bounce so much, stuff like that. Yeah, you can watch that video after this video. Congratulations, we have just finished talking about running economy. So now I'm gonna briefly explain how a training plan should look like. So in a race season, there are typically 2 to 3 periods. Firstly is your base period and your build period, and then your peak or taper period. So in your first phase, which is your base phase, the goal of the base phase is to build up a strong aerobic fitness as well as training your lactate threshold. So we don't have any VO2 max runs in your base phase. A base phase can last up to 3 to 5 months. If your goal race is early in the year, you might want to cut short to 2 months, but I think 1 month is a little bit too short for your base phase. Minimally at least 2 months for your base phase. You want to have lactate threshold workouts and repetition workouts, and obviously your long run every week. So in a month there are 4 weeks, right? So for the first 3 weeks you'll be progressing your weekly volume higher and higher. Maybe you start at 30k, the next week you go to 35, then the last week you go to 40. So after the 3 weeks of increasing your mileage, the 4th week you want to drop the mileage to a maximum of 60% of the highest week. So the goal of the rest week, which is your 4th week, right, is to get rid of all the fatigue that has been built up in the first 3 weeks of that month. So once your base phase is over, the next phase is called your build phase, and that's where we incorporate your VO2 max workouts in. VO2 max workouts are only added 1 or 2 months before the goal race. For each month in the build phase, you're also gonna keep doing that 3 weeks of build, then the last week of rest. But instead, we're not gonna build the mileage that much. We're gonna increase the duration of the workouts more. So for example, if you start the first week of your build phase at maybe 3 times 800 meter repeats, then the next week you might want to go to 4 times 800 meter repeats, and then the next week maybe you can go to 5. But keep in mind, it's perfectly okay to do the exact same workout on the previous week. So we've got our training plan, we know exactly what workouts to do, and now onto the race day itself. Okay, so I've got a few pointers to make your race a little bit more bearable. On the day before your race, you can do like a 20-minute easy run with some strides, and it's good to run your 5k race in cooler conditions because, as I said, the heat and temperature will affect your running economy. So if you can run your race early in the morning or later in the evening, that'll be to your benefit. I will suggest using your adrenaline to your advantage. So when you start, you're filled with adrenaline, right? You are usually going to run a little bit faster for your first lap, but be careful, don't run too fast. I suggest if you're aiming for 1 minute and 36 per lap, which is 20 minutes 5k, I suggest capping your first lap to be at most 1 minute 30 to 1 minute 32 a lap. Then the next lap onwards, drop it back down to 134, 135 and 136 minutes. The next tip for your race is to wear lightweight shoes. In fact, some runners even wear long distance spikes to run 5k and 10k races. The next tip is about pacing. You should be feeling the burn at around the 3 to 3.5 kilometer mark in your 5k race. That will mean that you've paced pretty well and you just have a little bit more to go and you're gonna get a good time. Okay, the next point is a super important one. If you can, get someone to pace you, and even better, get that pacer to run in front of you to break the wind for you. So the draft is really gonna help you run a little bit faster and make it a lot easier to run a sub 20-minute 5k. And then during a race, keep in mind the correct breathing pattern, which is 2 steps in, 2 steps out, and also 180 cadence. So hopefully this video gives you a good idea of what to do to train to a 20-minute 5k. Congratulations of making it this far into the video. I know it's a pretty long and pretty detailed video. If you still have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section below. And if you're interested in more content like this, be sure to hit the like button and smack the subscribe button. Okay guys, don't forget, if you train hard, you need to recover harder. So thank you guys for watching. See you guys again in the next video. Goodbye.